Okay, so while we're getting set up, I like to always get to know the audience. So, because obviously it's about people, that's what branding is about. Who here has already done a branding process, rebrand, refresh, or launch a new brand? Hands up. Okay, wow, quite a lot. And who here is thinking right now, wow, you know what? We need to do a rebrand or launch. Hands up. Okay, cool. So for those of you that have already done it, kol hakavod, you're alive, like I am. You probably got your scars up here. And I'm going to tell you all about how we made the branding process much, much easier by doing one simple thing. We took the process and we made it agile, meaning we applied a minimal viable brand, which is taken from minimal viable product methodology, and applied it to the process all the way through. And that meant that we were able to move fast. We broke things up. We were always thinking about our consumers in mind the whole way through, which you've heard a lot today. And we made it iterative. We actually shipped things out and tested it to see if it was resonating before it was actually launched. So let's go down the rabbit hole of what actually happened. So how did we get to here? This is launch day. Confetti, happiness, lots and lots of alcohol, especially by me. How did we get here? It looks effortless, no? For those of you that have done it, it's not. The first question we always need to ask as marketeers, as founders, also product, and actually through the entire organization is, when is the right time? And what are those markers for knowing when the right time is? Because in an impact-driven culture, there's always something else that needs to be done. So there's several markers which I'll talk through. One of them is huge product recognition, meaning everything's scaled, and then you can have debts and confusion if things are not consistent. Yes, that lovely magic word, consistency, it matters. And so that's one of the markers. The other marker is you've evolved your vision. You've evolved the essence of what you stand for. Or even if you didn't, but everything that is out there externally in the world is not matching and not aligned, then you have a gap. You have a gap in your messaging. You have a gap in where your vision is and what's communicated outwards. So that's another marker. A third marker is for those of us that are very heavy in performance-driven marketing, which we are at Simply as well, you could reach a cap in your performance. Or you go on to different channels and you're diversifying what you're doing. If you don't have a strong global brand, there's no oil to oil that. You can't actually reach that barrier and break through it. So those are some of the markers for knowing when is the right time. For us, this is a lovely view here. This was us before the brand process. So I'll ask another question. Who here knows any of our Simply apps? Hands up. Cool. And just for fun, who here is actually learning with our apps? Wow, this is awesome. Yay. And so for us, one of the biggest markers that kept prompting it, we snoozed branding for 6 years, managed to build a very successful global company without it and not deliberately working on it. Although tachlis, the products are a core of the brand. And one of our markers was, okay, we've got Joy Tunes, and we love Joy Tunes, but our actual consumers don't know Joy Tunes. What do they know? They know what they're experiencing this simply. And so this was one of our biggest markers because we had confusion and we had debts. And so this, every so often, I would check in with our CEO, Yuval, and I'd say, okay, is now the time? Are we there yet? No, we need to do X, Y, Z. Okay, pause. And then the minute we started to go beyond one instrument, we then needed to actually start working on it. And then the other marker was the evolution of our vision. We were always rooted in a household strategy, meaning we're bringing all this joy through these learning experiences in every home is household. But in the beginning, when you have your company strategy and then you're starting your branding strategy, the two need to live together. And so we needed to ask the question, are we going to go beyond music in the next 5 years? As you can see here, the answer was yes, because we recently went on to drawing, which is awesome. And so this was the evolution of our vision, which also prompted the rebranding process. The third marker here as well is that we spoke about consistency. So everything needs to be globally unified, tighten everything together. There is a common misconception where you think, okay, we're going to do brand, we're going to do branding, we need to go big, we need to go bold. I'm here to say you don't actually need to do it like that if it's not right. You need to listen to your audiences. Our process was very much rooted on listening to our audience, and it was based around that. So everything that we did, it wasn't disruptive. It tightened everything together and unified it under an umbrella strategy called Simply. The other thing that was very much part of it as well, I spoke about the evolution of the vision, is that we stood by music, learning and playing in every home. And so this was the result of the evolution of our vision. Meaningful moments in every home through learning new creative skills. No longer were we music, learning and playing, it actually moved to creative skills. And so this was a very much part of unifying everything together. So recapping, when is the right time? We went through the markers. There's also this other question of, do you start straight away? For us, we didn't need to do it in the beginning, and we snoozed it, as I said. If you're thinking about impact, you'll know when is the right time, and you'll fill those markers and those gaps. So when you start going, obviously, impact, right? Okay, what's the goal? What does success look like? So this is very much how we work all of the time in Simply. So within the branding process, we defined our goals, which I'm probably guessing is not really much of a shock here because of the things that I just mentioned. And so these were our goals. Think when you're going through this, what is it that you need this brand or branding process to achieve? Because these are your markers that will make sure that you have success. So, Agile. Also working with agencies as well. Because we needed to make everything within the methodology that we work, even something as simple as choosing an agency, we actually had 3 people, and only 3 people, working on the branding building, which was myself, a marketeer, and a designer. That was it. And we built the brand, and then we added muscle power with a design agency. But then sometimes they're used to working in a very holistic, ship the whole concept all at once. I remember the first time we saw our first concept, I literally wrote Yuval on Zoom, on CEO, I feel sick. Oh my God, this is it's not aligned. And so what we did right there and then was we started to introduce the fast testing cycles, broke everything down into loops, made sure everything was aligned with the strategy, and then we got right on track, and it turned out amazing. And it wasn't trivial to turn an agency to work together in an agile methodology, because it's not normally how things are done. So within the approach, as I spoke about, you need to define what success looks like. you break it up into fast cycles. So, for example, everything along the timeline had testing cycles built in. These are the key points where we need to test. This is where we need to understand if this is resonating with our audiences. And then you iterate, and then you ship it out. Within this process, it's like a very important point to say is that also as Israelis, we're all very opinionated, is that we need to define key decision owners within this iterative approach. Like, how do you know, really, that, okay, this opinion matters more than this one? Especially when it's a collaborative approach. So this is one of the things that really helped us. We had 2 key decision owners. That was it. We had then a layer of stakeholders, which I defined, and then the ripple out of the whole company. So we moved and we evolved like this. So what were some of the things that we went through? So I'm not going to go through this because this is just a typical branding process of what it looks like. This is what ours looks like as well. And the legal point here is it's not at the end. It's all the way through. We heard from Koto this morning. It's super important to check things out as early as possible because that takes ages. And so this was what our typical process looked like. And we started, like within product methodology, of listening to our audience. Understanding by listening to over 140 voices through surveys, interviews, focus groups, to really collect those themes of what is it, what's the essence, which then will shape the strategy. So let's have a listen.
Yeah, maybe I just want to play music in front of my whole family.
I would like to play at home and play next to my father.
He wants to play for his grandparents who live in Chicago.
I could play for my friends, for my family, maybe on a bar, some place to play some rock and roll.
I like that there's no pressure. I like being able to sit down and just play. I can start right from day one if I want to and continue on. You can always go back and practice. That's what I enjoy, the convenience, the availability of it, it's easy to follow. I really enjoy it.
You feel like somebody's watching over
there's like a nice person in there.
So here you see, it's very emotional, right? Makes sense, especially the things that we're putting out in the world. It's an emotional thing. You're giving people the capability to realize their dreams, learn whatever it is they want, jam, draw, sing. It's an emotional thing. That's what the summary of how we make people feel on the left. Then on the right, this is the competitor space. Also, we at the time were saying the same thing. Everyone was saying the same thing. And it's also functional and rational. And so this here, within doing the market positioning by the competitor analysis, gave us the opportunity of, okay, here is our standout. Here is how we are going to differentiate ourselves within our brand. And so that then led us to the strategy, right? We've heard a lot about that. The core essence. Why do people come to your product? Is actually not necessarily for that functional benefit. It's for how it makes them feel, as we've heard over and over again, for a really good reason. And so for us, we heard that the why for our learners was they want to make the most of their time by learning new creative skills, and it makes them feel joyful. Who here can agree with the joyful if you're using our apps? That's actually, okay, phew, you did put your hands up. And so then that led us to, okay, what are the pillars? What are the emotional benefits for how you make people feel? So we had 4. It's coming from the product. It's not anything revolutionary. And then within our testing, we actually refined it to 2. So then it came out to be joyful and supportive environment. And then this is what led all of the decision making along the way from when we went into the brand identity. The other part, as I mentioned briefly, is it was a really collaborative approach. This was part of our strategy. It was company-wide. There was no the CEO and a couple of VPs, which is pretty non-existent, in a room, closed, and then ship out. No, we led the company all the way through. I would stand up doing show and tells, explaining decision logic, where we're at. We had workshops, focus groups, even choosing the color palette, call out, okay, we're trying to understand for the print run if this is match designers, yalla, let's go through it. And it was very, very collaborative. And the key thing here within the Agile brand building approach is that actually this accelerated the process. It accelerated it. People are smart. It's not just marketers. It's not just product. It affects everyone. And at the end of the day, when you release that brand, everyone needs to adopt it. And so this accelerated adoption and belonging. And so these were some of the key learnings that we had within the strategy. Then you get to naming, like we heard, naming, what's in a name. Again, another misconception, you need to go big for the name. At the end of the day, when you do the brand, it's going to build the meaning into the name. And so within the decision making, changing from Joy Tunes wasn't taken lightly. We had a very, very high bar. We knew that we needed the name to be future-proof. That was obviously one marker for, okay, are we changing the name? How do we know the name is right? And then the other thing within it was we needed to keep the Simply equity. So this is what guided us and making sure that it was future-proof. And within that, when you're doing branding, you're obviously doing it because you want growth, sustainable growth. And there we made the decision that, okay, we have this house of brands at the moment with all the Simply apps. Everything needs to be within Simply. And after ideating 50 names, narrowing it down, testing it within our audience, what do you think this means? Getting to a short list, another testing, what do you think this is making you feel? And this is how we chose our name. So you've done the strategy, which actually is the more harder part because there's a lot of opinions and you're touching really like right the core of the essence, which can create lots of fruitful discussions. And so then you get to the look. Okay, so how do you know that the look is going to be on the look? So we had, again, taking from our strategy as something as simple as the logo. Within the Agile approach, we broke it down. Again, symbol. Do you need a symbol? Yes, no. Yes, we did. We wanted to build in recognition for that. And we then defined the pillars of how do we know it's the right symbol. And we had taken from our strategy that it's joyful, that it's guiding our learners through their journey, because that's actually what our products are doing. And so that was the decision making there, joyful moments of magic and joy guiding you. And that's how we knew how we were doing it, right. And then the logo, the actual word mark part, it's supportive, it's warm, it's friendly. And so this is what guided us all the way through, and we did this in one sprint, 2 weeks, ship, done, also tested, also sent for like qualitative focus groups as well. Our color, another key crucial part. Obviously, brand is not just the color and the logo. It's very much actually rooted in the essence, the strategy. And so, but with our color, how do you go about choosing a color? So because of our product recognition, we had huge recognition with the color purple. So we said, okay, this actually needs to stay. People already recognize us as purple. So that was the core color palette. I actually don't buy into choose the color because of what it symbolizes. Nobody actually really thinks about it like creativity and joy is actually what purple represents. But it was more about being consumer first and whether or not it's fitting the pillars. And then we have our secondary palette, which I call the spices. So you have your main ingredient, pepper it with a few spices, which is joyful in there. And that's how we chose our color. So what does it look like when it all comes together? You've built the brand. So for us, this is it. Thank you. It was very emotional when we saw this. That was actually our launch video, and I got a few tears even reminiscing that. And yes, art direction, super important in everything because it's what you're putting across. So these were some of our identity learnings. Break it down all the way through. Check it's aligned with the strategy. That's how you know you're making the right decisions. So even when you've built the brand, then you've got the very hard task of, holy cow, we need to implement it in all our assets. And so, yeah, that was my reaction of like, oh my God, okay. And so what we did there in the MVB approach, which I'm saying I'm coining this because I think it's the first time, and this is probably recorded, so within the MVB approach, we actually only chose our highly visible assets. We didn't go and implement the brand on everything because we were also going to be testing before we launched. And so we only chose, for example, Simply Piano, Simply Guitar. Everything else doesn't matter for the moment. And our app store, our website, and our top performing creatives. That was it. And then what we did was when we launched it, we had 2 key questions that guided us for implementation. Because there's many ways to implement, as some of you here will know. And so we had, what is needed for brand impact? Is it ownable? Is it distinctive? We've spoken a lot today about differentiation. And the other guiding question was, does this negate the brand? Meaning, is this a showstopper? And you say, whoa, okay, we need to pull this, we need to change something here, it's not been implemented. And this actually also sped up the implementation. And from the agile perspective, the team grew from 3 and to everything that was needed to implement. We worked in a really tight team, that's how we work at Simply. And it had data, devs, whatever was needed, product, and marketing, obviously, and marketing. And we worked very tight together, team of 14, shipped it within, I want to say about just under 2 months to implement it, and also testing as well, more importantly. And so that brings me to, how do you know what you've built resonates? Again, a typical approach could be, if it's right for your company or your marketing, go ship it, just go do it and launch, go big. For us, within the iterative approach, you need to understand if it is resonating before it's launched on a big scale. And so that's very much taking the product methodology of, okay, you have a hypothesis, go test it. So that's what that was about. And so The way you do it is, yes, you test, and you can test even on a big global brand. What we did in our testing was we had in our products, because they're highly performing and you need to obviously understand if you're going to be like meeting growth goals and if there's anything that needs to be mitigated. It's a defensive test. So in our products, we rolled out A/B. We had hype up for our existing learners to understand, okay, is this resonating with them? And we tested in the App Store because it's hugely visible and obviously the huge anchor of the performance. And so we tested before so that we could get the confidence of, yes, we are good to go. And so as an example, this is actually one of the examples from the testing with our App Store, the old at the top, the new at the bottom, and it resulted in over a 15% lift in conversion, which is phenomenal just from brand look, which all of us here, we know how impactful it is. And so this, with along the other testing that we did, we're like, okay, yes, we are good to go. We are ready to launch. So some of the learnings here was in an impact-driven culture, yeah, you can test before you launch. Go do it. And what's really important is by being guided by impact that you set your success or fail metrics. And that will also guide you along. For those that have done this type of thing within a branding process, you'll all know, and also just a life tip, is that we can often get analysis paralysis for, okay, is this the right decision, is it not? But if you have your framework and your pillars and you're guided by your strategy and what's needed for impact, you won't get into analysis paralysis. So to sum it up, it goes without saying, it doesn't stop at launch, right? So yes, one of the important points that I was making, which is not trivial at all, is that you need to make sure that you have the team in place that can keep doing the ongoing internal education around the company. At the end of the day, I like to call them brand champions, because you need to hold it. And then within that, you need to understand, like I said, when do you know enough is enough? If you have your guiding success metrics, what's going to guide you for impact, you'll know when enough is enough. And as all of us know, sitting here, it doesn't just stop like a feature. You've built it and that's it. Brand is like a gummy, right? Where it's going to stretch. You need to adapt it. You need to evolve it. So take that into account as well. And most of all, be guided by impact. Thank you.